all the people that you see on the stage are senior industry stalwarts, legends, whatever you'd like to call them, titans. All of them have been on this very stage before. They're not new to this stage. A lot of you who've been here last year as well have interacted with them. These are the people who sort of lead our business in our region, have great insights on what's happening, across Asia Pacific and some other parts of the world. And we're going to chat with them to try and find out and piece together what's happening in our region, some parts of the world, and specifically, how are they looking at India, which is of prime importance to all of us. So let's start with the first question. Can I request, starting with you, Alan, to just give us a very quick summary of how 2024 has been for you, just a broad outlook of what it has been for Hilton Hotels in Asia Pacific, and then we'll take it across.
Sure. Namaste, good morning. Good morning all. I mean, we're here to talk about India, so I'll be super brief on the global stuff. And I'm sure we'll get to consensus relatively quickly. I think sort of two speeds, right? The global geopolitical environment clouds the fundamentals of travel and tourism. And the fundamentals of travel and tourism globally have been fantastic, right? Right across the board, it's been a record year. We signed more hotels than we've ever signed before. We had a phenomenal top line performance. We had a strong bottom line performance. Share prices reached an all-time high. And so it can be hard to understand because the fundamentals get lost. So globally, we did really well. In Asia Pacific, we did great. Right? We opened a record number of hotels. We got to 1,000 hotels across Asia a year before we had forecasted to. But if global was good and Asia Pacific was great, then India was amazing for us, absolutely amazing. And so last time we were on this panel, we were trying to convince the room that India was on the verge of having a travel and tourism moment, and it was going to be sustainable. It was underpinned by all the things we are talking about that. The sustainable growth trajectory for hospitality assets in India feels like, as the previous speaker said, feels like it's turned on a dime, but it's been a long time coming. So within that, the India performance has been amazing. And I'm sure you'll get similar sentiment. But I would say, not only has it been amazing, and let me close on this, it's been globally recognized. We'll get into the details of why, but never before in my career have I seen so much institutional grade capital trying to get into India. Now, taking development risk is a different thing, but particularly for existing assets, there's a sort of a convergence of energy towards this market that's really exciting.
Dimitri, while I...
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't, good morning everybody. I couldn't agree more with Alan. I mean, from a Wyndham Hotels and Resorts perspective, we've been gearing up for this success for many years. We've been talking about incredible India, we've been talking about the talent, we've been talking about the potential, we've been talking about the economy. I was the economy class. I was extremely happy to see Akash's presentation yesterday talking about the economy class and the brands in that space growing in India. We just expanded our office in Delhi, in Gurgaon. We were gearing up. We had, like Alan said, we had a great year. RevPAR, we had a great year on signings. We have an extremely healthy pipeline. We have 66 hotels that are open. I would say, and I know that is a bold statement, I've said this before to the media, I think we introduced franchising to India when everybody thought that franchising is never going to work in this country. We believe in the entrepreneurial spirit of the Indian entrepreneurs, and we saw that in action. As I said, we have 66 hotels. We have a healthy pipeline of 50 executed contracts. Great talent. Our RevPAR was up 10.5% year on year. And overall, I like the fact that now we're going back to actually not, as you said, not the potential of India, but how irresistible India is going to look, not to just us, but to inbound tourism as well. One of the key components that we are thinking here and how we develop further our business in India is not just about the domestic tourism. It's not about the things that everybody's going to talk about, religious tourism and spiritual tourism and well and being. It's about the inbound tourism as well. We need to introduce irresistible India to the world. And that is a great opportunity for us in the next 5 years, not just to grow in a country that has been extremely welcoming to us and extremely good to us, but how we can introduce irresistible India to the world. That's my #1 priority.
And you moved from your Western jacket to the Nehru jacket, or now the Modi jacket as it's called, as part of this shift on focus to India?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've said before, I think Indians are going to rule the world, so I need to be ready. You know, I'm having Indian food. I've got a local Indian restaurant in Hammersmith. I eat there twice a week just for my stomach to be ready, because you know the Greeks, we invented food and hospitality, but not spices.
So last year we spoke about the 756 shoes that Dimitri has, the largest collection in the world. Now he's collecting jackets.
Yes, me and Imelda Markets.
You and Imelda Markets. Michael, from your perspective on global hotel performance, what's it been like 2024? Have you seen a shift?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for inviting me here. I feel like I've kind of gate crashed a VIP party, so very pleased to be here. Look, the global trends, I obviously did quite a detailed presentation yesterday, and last year we did 72 presentations at various conferences, right? So we're really in the thick of the industry when it comes to not just the kind of the top line revenue trends, but also the cost metrics as well. And I think the fascinating thing has been as the revenues have started to slow globally, we've gone through the last couple of years of quite serious ramp up, and the reality is that it does normalize, right? We start to see less of those kind of double-digit growths on the top line. The markets that really stand out are the ones that, you know, are able to either offset, because the costs have continued to increase. We've seen, you know, huge increases in labor costs, energy costs in certain parts of the world. So there are definitely challenges. It's not all rosy. But those markets, and India is definitely one of them, that have been able to sustain incredible demand growth, continue to drive various other areas of the business as well, so other revenue streams in ways that I think buck the trends globally. And then also be able to look at the cost base and look at doing things innovatively and embrace new technologies, etc. You've really seen the difference between those markets that have been able to do that and not. And of course, it's not all in the hands of hoteliers, because much of it comes from economic factors. Europe actually has had a really good year in 2024. Two things really. One of them is the relaxing of energy costs has been probably the biggest factor. And also I think over the challenging years of 22, 23, where record levels of inflation across many of the key markets meant the hotels had to just be very creative in the way that they operate, right? They had to do things very differently. I think that set European hoteliers up very well for 2024. The US has seen flatline revenue growth, which again is, you know, a real challenge when labor costs and supply costs, etc., continue to increase, and still very unknown as to, you know, what 2025 will really look like. But certainly a challenging year ahead. The Middle East has been the real outlier from a performance perspective. You know, huge events, massive amounts of supply entering the market, and still being able to sustain it with increased demand growth. And this region, again, it's a real mixed bag. I mean, of course, Chinese performance has been the real challenge. The macro picture that's really dragged down the region's performance overall. But yeah, of course, India's in the mix of around 5 or 6 markets in this region that are really flying right now.
Raj, over to you.
Well, thanks, Mandeep, and good morning, all. Great to be back with friends. You know, the bullet train at the back reminds me that it was only a few years ago that we were in coma on life support. Many pundits had pretty much said that our industry is finished forever. And now it feels like we are just in that bullet train, going as fast as we can, and there's no reason to slow down or stop. And that's how it feels. So I am blessed that I have a region like Asia Pacific ex-China, because as Michael said, Some of the hottest travel and tourism markets are in my part of the world. The three things that stood out for me was last year was the resilience of the Asia consumer and Indian consumer becoming a big part of it. When you think about China being shut for much longer coming out of COVID, we had fully recovered to 2019 RevPAR by end of 2022, right? 23, 24 were record years. I mean, double-digit RevPAR growth, and so was development and so on. But when you think about the consumer and the geopolitical shift, this China plus one story, it is really starting to come through, be it in Indonesia or Vietnam or Thailand or other markets, where you start to see the middle class rise, and that's what's happening here in India. The highest amount of global FDI coming in is in South Asia and Southeast Asia. And I think that's what's going to play out really well over the course of the next few years, if not a couple of decades. The second thing to me was just, you see the growth of our member base and the aspiration that the travelers have today. There was a lot of conversation coming out of COVID that was revenge travel, revenge travel, revenge travel. I think we are way past revenge travel now. And the reality today is that people are clearly prioritizing travel over other expenses. We see that in discussions with our credit card partners and so on. And as a result, as we build a very strong base of our loyal members, in our case, Marriott Bonvoy, it's incredible that you see the power of this consumer. So in my world of Marriott across Asia, ex-China, 70% of our occupancy last year, for the last 5 months and going into this year, is driven by Bonvoy members. That's how powerful the program has become. And globally, we have 230 million members here. In Asia, about 70 million. But it's incredible that the consumer is willing to spend more in the business of travel. And then finally, in terms of when you think about the money that's being deployed, Asia, if you ask the private equity players pre-COVID, they wouldn't be that hot on Asia from an investment point of view. Today, every private equity player is salivating, right, for investing money in our industry. And we see record deals. Last year in our world, we clearly positioned in Asia ex-China as the largest hotel company by far, but we signed 109 deals. India was a record story on growth. So like all of my colleagues said, I think as an industry, we are placed well. We want to make sure that we continue to build on it and learn from the past of COVID and not make some of those mistakes that we did pre-COVID and just continue to build forward.
Super. I'm going to build a little bit on this, Alan, on the Asia story. It's largely been, when you look at the global picture, we've always looked at hotels, stories being largely US-centric, with all of your brands as well. The number of hotels you have in the US and the number of hotels you have in the rest of the world, there would be a huge gap. I want to talk a little bit about Asia. Alan, how do you see Asia? A lot of the countries are seeing a lot of rapid growth, right? We're seeing a lot of surge, which Raj was just talking about, post-COVID, a lot of surge in travel. I've seen Indians become one of the most prolific outbound travelers. And we've had record travel to countries like Japan and other parts of Asia. Do you think that with all these the Asian countries now growing very rapidly, do you see intra-continent travel picking up? And is that something that we should be looking at?
I do. I mean, I think ultimately the industry is competing with other sectors in real estate, right? So it's behooving on us as an industry to ensure that we have a robust industry and to ensure that hotel assets continue to be favor investment class. which means hotels are a higher risk. They can be a higher return because they're hypersensitive to market shifts. And so the fundamentals in the long term, as an investor, you have to believe is better than commercial or residential real estate. Resi, you can take your money off the table immediately. Commercial, you get a 5 to 9 year lease. Hospitality assets are as good as the market is on any particular day. And then within any particular day, of course, you know, Raj and I can banter around who spends the most money in employment and loyalty programs and signings in any particular year. But the reality of our industry is it's asset by asset, owner return by owner return. And to maximize that return and to make sure that the asset class is performing, then you need to make sure that you're targeting not only customers of today, but customers of tomorrow. So I get disheartened when I hear people discount China based on today's macro politics as an example. So I look after all of Asia Pacific. China is 126 million outbound trips a year. This Chinese New Year was the start of Chinese recovery. With the exception of India, it's the number 1 or 2 outbound market into every economy in Asia. And if you think of experiential travel and not the Chinese group traveler you perhaps have in your mind, if you think of experiential travel and how we're going to continue to provide best-in-class owner returns for their hotel assets, and then within that we can debate brands, then of course we have a fundamental strength in the Indian domestic traveler, right? That's where the action is today. That's why our focus service and mid-scale brands are doing so well. That's why you're seeing people real estate bank along infrastructure projects. So, you know, partnerships like our 2 big SLAs that we announced will come to the fore. But outside of that, if you think of the amount of luxury stock or full service stock that is being built, we need to make sure that the Asia Pacific traveler, which has proven more robust, is also a target market. Indian outbound is another reason why everybody needs to be here, particularly from a global hotel company perspective. But there is a phenomenal size of the prize in Indian inbound. And Indian inbound is 11 million. And we're going to say how fantastic that is. To put it in context, Phuket, small island, you may have heard of it, gets 30 million inbound arrivals a year. So the upside for international inbound into this market is something for us to focus on in the future. And there's reasons why it's not there today. And there's reasons why it will be there tomorrow, and that's all about travel infrastructure. An Indian domestic customer, even at luxury, will drive in a car for 6 hours to get from Delhi to Jaipur, now 3 hours with the expressway as an example. The international customer will not, unless it's convenient, and being stuck in stop-start traffic is not one. So I would say for today, absolutely domestic inbound, absolutely we should be proud of 11 million. For tomorrow, your incredible India speech at the start, I think is appropriate. But an irresistible India with travel experiences that a newly affluent Thai, Indonesian, Chinese, recovering Japan yen customer to get to, that's another consideration. And so we need to make sure that both are there. I would put it to the room that the rest of the planet doesn't know about the infrastructure build, and they consider India a fantastic experience, but hard to travel. Investors think it's hard to build, travelers think it's hard to travel, and there's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines, including global agents, thinking, well, I'll wait till the infrastructure improved. So I think we should be giving a quiet confidence and sound of a round of applause for 11 million. I think it's a very low target, and just keep the Phuket number in your mind to put it in context of 2 streams. One, domestic travel, the other, inbound attraction, and we can do a lot better than we're doing today. And to your point, and to everyone's point, we're doing fantastically today.
And I would agree with that. I mean, the key, if you look at the strategy that we have from a Wyndham perspective, how do you bring more clients into India? And that's the beauty of the brands. What do the brands do? What do we all do? We provide health, safety, security. we provide affinity, we provide, we have 140 million Wyndham Rewards members. That's a huge community. If you combine our 3 communities, we're talking about 500 million people. I mean, can you imagine? We have the power of introducing India to 500 million people. That is where the real power of the brands come. Irrespective if you are in the luxury, and we are very happy. We're just about to launch at the end of November or sooner our first Wyndham Grand in Udaipur, which is our first kind of foray into the upper scale hospitality in India. That for us it's a huge step towards being in India in all the different classes, right? So it's not just about economy, luxury, mid-scale, upscale, and all. Consumers don't understand that. They understand health, safety, security. They understand loyalty. They understand brand affinity. They understand exactly what you said. I can go there and I have no issue going there because it's a safe and sound place. And I think this is where India, the Indian tourism, is actually doing a phenomenally good job. I know there are conversations about budgets and PR. We all have to work together. We do it in other countries as Wyndham. We work with the tourism ministry. We work with the tourism boards. I took a taxi the other day and the guy said, "Oh, where you come from?" I said, "I come from Greece." And he said, "Okay, what's the population of Greece?" And I said, 9 million. He started laughing. He said, "A country with 9 million? What kind of country is this?" I said, "Oh, 5,000 years old, my friend." But anyway, that's the understanding of the numbers here, right? It's just phenomenal, the opportunity here. But we have to do the duty of care that the brands have to introduce India to the world. I keep on saying this. We can make a killing here, brand-wise, entrepreneurial-wise. We can grow, introduce India to the world. That's, for me, it's a huge opportunity.
Raj, everyone's talking about India. You did too. You had probably your best year ever in India. 7,000 new keys added. You grew by over 200% over the last year. And that's almost half the pipeline. So phenomenal sort of, so tell us a little bit more about how is India shaping up for you guys?
I've been saying it for some time now through last year, but India travel and tourism landscape is like Dimitris' jacket, red hot. Said India is the shining star. In our case, we did have a record year, you're right, 7,000 rooms. We would have never believed only a few years ago that was possible. But what, at least from my perspective, stood out was 2 or 3 things. One, 50% of these rooms that we signed were with our existing partners, right? And that to me goes to the trust and confidence that we have with our partners. Ultimately, results, performance trumps all. And when you build those relationships and you are in a growth stage like this, I think it's just truly remarkable. The second thing was that of the 7,000 rooms, 70% were in the luxury and premium space, right? So that goes to show that when you think about India and the ability for the consumer to spend, it is very, very strong. And that, particularly in the leisure space, we generally believe there is an incredible amount of opportunity. And then the third thing was really our brands like Moxie, right? We launched early last year, January, the Moxie in Bangalore. By the end of the year, we had 2 open. We have now 6 signed. We signed 2 just yesterday. There are at least 20 to 30 more that will come around in terms of signings in the next few months. The demand for that brand and how it's come through is phenomenally strong, and the love that the millennials have for that brand. So when you think about the India travel landscape, be it in luxury, Ritz-Carltons, JW Marriotts, or in the Moxie space, it remains red hot, just like Dimitris' jacket.
Which brings me to what you said yesterday in your presentation, and you said it twice. You said India is the hottest destination in the world today. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, I'm glad I said it first because it's already been fired around quite a lot. And I can link it back to HotStats, I think, in some kind of way as well, maybe. Yeah, so of course, like for the last few years, as I said, certainly coming out of the pandemic, there was a lot of a shift around in, regards to which parts of the world saw different levels of ramp up of performance on the top line. And of course, there was a big shift around in the operating models, the base of hotels. And India was one of those kind of rare regions where we saw, we've seen like up to 50% growth in TrevPAR since 2019, right? This is like, these numbers are, are really insane on their own. But you mix that with the reduction in the cost base that we saw coming out of the other side of the pandemic. Most regions of the world didn't have that luck, right? Because there was high levels of inflation, there were incredible levels of, challenges in the supply chain of labor, energy costs, all those things I spoke about earlier. And, maybe pre-pandemic as well, a lot of Northern Europe and certainly in the US, hotels had already gone through quite a shift over recent years in the operating model. There was already this kind of constant review of the cost base of hotels. And I think a lot of that happened coming out of the other side of the pandemic for India. And it's just positioned this market, this region, so strongly going forward. If I tell you that India in particular sits at the markets I presented yesterday, which was around 15 markets of the key markets around Asia Pacific and the Middle East, India sat at number 2 from the bottom end of the lowest labor margin of those markets. We think 15% of the total revenue is spent in labor in this region. Only Egypt has a lower one, right? And that's gone from 18% pre-pandemic. So this kind of shift of the cost base mixed with the growth in revenue, and knowing that there's still the stabilized line looks something like this for India, so it's still heading on the top line, it's heading in the right direction. And the more automation, the more kind of relooks that we do of the cost base, this kind of zero-based budgeting approach that I think is quite common here already, means that it's really well set up to continue to see margins grow. Just for perspective as well, since pre-pandemic, India has seen 7 percentage points increase in GOP margin. Right? If you take that in context,
it's amazing.
It's just phenomenal. It's 46.5% average GOP margin for hotels across India.
That's
the other thing I would add is it's not just stabilized profit, it's when you open hotels, within the first month you're generating profit.
Which
right?
has changed so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, and I just was talking about Moxies, and you think about the rate we are able to drive north of 10,000, first month making profit across most category of hotels. It's incredible, and it's driven by some of those things that Michael just talked about. But I do continue to say to the team that we got to remember the hard decisions we made during COVID. We can't let go of all of that. So we got to stay true and make sure we continue to improve productivity because that's going to be the key for long-term success.
That's why it's nice that he doesn't live in London. In London, we say, the brighter the sun in the morning, the more you need an umbrella at lunchtime. always carry that umbrella. That's a great comment, actually.
Alan, Raj talked about Moxie, and yesterday we saw a presentation on economy hotels. You've recently done something which is a little outside the box. You've signed third-party agreements for the development of 2 of your new brands into Hilton, the Spark and the Hampton. And you've got these wonderful mock-up rooms outside for everybody to see during the breaks. So tell us a little bit about that partnership and how you're looking at developing and why a third party and what sort of growth are you looking at from?
Thanks, Mandeep. Look, you've heard a lot over the years at this event on consensus of, it's never been if not when in India, it's always been when is the right time. And and I've spoken at this conference before on two things. One, I'm always conscious of not to be doing an advertorial. I can't stand it when we start, you get a panel and we're meant to be discussing the needs of the industry and legislation and change and complexity and friendly budgets, and we end up having these little advertorial moments. So I'm going to try not to do it. So let me cover it briefly. I believe, and we believe, I think as an industry, that the infrastructure build that's happening in India at the moment is the same of the superhighways in the 50s in the US that saw the explosion of franchising and the explosion of a new consumer class that needs to travel to stay in your products. You can say build it and they will come. They can't if they can't get there or it takes too long. Look at China and the Belt and Road Initiative, and the same applies. The explosion, we went from 5 hotels in China in a 20-year period to will be 888. Not all sectors are doing well, but primarily through the explosion of a domestic consumer through ease of travel, fast trains, highways. That moment is for India now. And so as this comes to fruition, as the airports get privatized, as the rail corridors get done, as 36 kilometers of new road gets laid every day, regardless of who gets it, or the market's big enough for everybody on the stage and then some, that explosion in the mid-scale space is about to happen. Now, why are we doing strategic license agreements? And let me talk about the difference. The reality is focus service hotels work best at scale. So doing an individual franchise unit for that owner until they get to their 5th and 6th and 7th, like people have in the US, it's great and they can be profitable from day one. But actually having a single partner that can consolidate costs as a management company offers even greatest returns. Now, we've stayed out of the market for a long time. We've had 2 things and 2 agreements and 2 very different brands. And you can see them in the mock-up rooms that we've built downstairs. One of them is Spark by Hilton, and our great partners at Embassy who are in the room, and Embassy by Olive have partnered with us. That is a conversion brand designed to, we launched it in the US with applicability for other markets. This is the second place we've launched it, with the ability to take largely the unorganized or unbranded sector and to have access to Hilton's platform in a really cost-effective way. And what we've seen in the US is particularly the unbranded stock, or perhaps the independent focus service stock, be able to have access to our platform for a cost that perhaps they couldn't have dreamed of in the past. And we and our partners at Embassy are of the view that there is a vast opportunity in the very, very top end of the unorganized sector. There'll be some new build properties in it that will see an explosion based on the history of other markets in the infrastructure build. The other was with Hampton by Hilton, which is a more well-known brand, sort of award-winning #1 franchise brand for 18 years at running. I said I wasn't going to do an advertorial and then did one. And it's easy to understand, but the same thing applies. It's the most recognized brand. If we're going to look at inbound as an opportunity, it's a by Hilton brand. And so for an entry-level customer, being able to stay in a by Hilton brand at the right price point, and for an inbound customer, Hampton by Hilton is one of the largest brands in China, as an example, and rolling out all across Asia, that really makes a difference. But why strategic license agreements? I would say that the industry, and particularly the emerging industry in third-party management, we have lots of people that want to self-steward hotels. But even for a Hampton and a focus service hotel, it's not quite that easy, right? So these big third-party proven track record management can make it easier, and they're more experienced in market and trading in subsidies that perhaps we're not. So I would imagine we will get to single unit franchising in the future, but we took the same approach in China. We started with big partners, we taught them franchising, to some extent we taught the market franchising, and then safety first, then we moved to single unit. And in the interim, the first mover advantage that the big master license or strategic license agreements had is they got to consolidate those owner returns. So it's a little bit of winning formula applied in different markets. But for me, right across our enterprise, and if Krishna said was with us, he would say the same thing. It is the two most exciting deals we did last year. We led with it on earnings, and it is a precursor to what we believe will be an explosion that I think, you know, we used to say not within your lifetime, but an explosion within our lifetime we'll see in this market. That is, let me close on this to add context to it, that will be bigger than we've ever seen. So here's my close. In the US, there is one hotel room for every 30 people. In China, there is one hotel room for every 300 people. In India, there's one hotel room for every 3,000 people. And you're about to say, yeah, but in India, it's a big population, but what about the poverty line? Look at GDP growth and rising middle class. The next 15 years, 850 million people become consumers in this economy. That is by far and away the largest opportunity in the market.
Absolutely. And I'm going to ask you, Dimitri, before we sort of quickly get to the last part, we're running out of time. Given all the growth, and you know, you have 1,600 hotels in China. You're just about getting to 160 odd opened and some in the pipeline. So I'm going to ask you, when are you going to reach 500 hotels in India? And if you didn't realize, this is a trick question. Jeff is sitting right there, and he's listening.
There was never a better time to be fired than in front of 300 people or 600 people. So I think it is, first of all, last year, I think I did mention it again, Alan is doing a phenomenal job promoting Wyndham strategy and plans. We've been, I said it last year, this year he actually did a better job, so I really thank you in front of my boss. We've been part of that growth in the US that Alan, and I'm joking, right? Alan mentioned. All of us, we got so much value out of this. I think it is unfair to compare China with India. I think India has its own story. You know, one of the biggest challenges I had with as I was growing up, my mother would always compare me with my brother, and if I would go back, that was one of the biggest challenges that I had as I was growing up. Do not compare India to China. I think India has its own story. India has its own chapter to write in the global hospitality industry. India has its own chapter to write in the consumers and how consumers travel. I don't think that it's about the numbers, how many hotels are you going to have in India in the next 5 years. It's about partnerships, it's about the right owners, it's about doing the right thing for the Indian economy, doing the right thing for the Indian consumer. I'm extremely proud. All our hotels in India, they all rise up to the sustainability challenge. Another PR exercise that we need to do. India is sustainable. So all to me, and I'm not trying to avoid your question, but I don't like comparing India with China. I think China has its own story to write in this book.
You should have been in the diplomatic services. You said everything except the number, but we'll talk about
Jeff
that.
will tell you, we do not kind of forecast or, you know, we do not try to put numbers. For us, sustainable growth and take advantage of all the great things that Alan said, that's our number one priority. And I'm sure it is the same with you, right? You just said it about Moxie and so forth. So
we've got very, very little time. And what I'm going to do is just quickly, Raj, I'll do it with you, and I'll probably do it with Dimitri. Something that comes to mind, an anecdote during your various travels to India. Is there anything interesting that's happened which you'd like to share with the rest of the audience?
You know, for me, beyond everything we do, it's the incredible talent India has, right? And what has always made me so very proud is just having associates who start at the ground level and now for us are running hotels around the world.
Right.
And sometimes you show up and you walk in and you'll have the general manager walk out and you'll be like shocked. And they'll remind you of a story when they were at front desk at you know, one of your hotels, and this real aspiration that everybody has, this fight that they want to become the best, is just incredible. And you see that hotel industry across the world is now very strongly dominated by talent from India.
Yeah,
so
true. Yeah, thanks. That's wonderful. And as always, we have to give the last word to you, Dimitri. So tell us something, an interesting anecdote that you may want to share.
Yeah. Oh, come on. Yeah, I mean, look, we do a lot of sacrifices. This job has a huge sacrifice level, right? And I have a great stories about India, but I want to give you one story about somebody who's very close to me, actually the closest person that I have in my life, and who has done a lot of sacrifices to be where I am today and standing in front of you. It's April 2023. We lost her sister at the age of 55 from cancer. Her sister left my wife with one small private object that she wanted. She was a very spiritual lady. She wanted to leave it at the Hindu temple. I've never traveled with my wife on business trips, but she was begging me to come to India to do exactly what her late sister asked. And a good friend of mine who sits in the audience, and I'm not going to mention his name, said, "You don't want to stay at one of yours because it's going to be at work. Why don't you stay at one of mine?" And I want to show you a video that will resonate with my family and with me forever. So I don't know if they can play that video.
Please, if you have it.
So we lost her sister. I will never forget that smile, and I will never forget everything that you've done for me all these years. So thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that, it's a wrap-up of the first panel that we have. Thank you very much for being a great audience. And guys, you're all absolutely stunning. Thank you so much.